Welcome as we dive into a seismic shift that's shaking the very core of professional tennis. We're broadcasting at a time when a genuine cultural movement, not just powerful forehands and backhands, is upending the established order of the Women's Tennis Association. Your first thought might be Coco Gauff, the American phenom who captured a Grand Slam title and the hearts of millions. If I asked you right now who the biggest star on the WTA Tour is, you might say Aryna Sabalenka, the world #1 and Belarusian powerhouse. Her on-court intensity is matched only by her massive global brand. Or maybe you'd point to Świątek, the master strategist who has held the rankings in a death grip. These are the titans of the modern game. They're the players landing million-dollar endorsement deals and headlining prime-time broadcast slots, the ones you see on billboards, and the marquee names every tournament director dreams of featuring. But what if I told you that, according to some of the most respected voices in tennis, Gauff isn't the single biggest attraction in the women's game right now? The player causing unprecedented crowd surges and total chaos across the globe. What if I told you it's not Sabalenka either? Today, we're here to unpack a stunning revelation, recently confirmed by former ATP touring pros on the popular Nothing Major podcast. They've officially recognized one player as a legitimate rock star. That player is Alexandra Eala, a 20-year-old sensation from the Philippines, who is single-handedly rewriting the rules of fan engagement. Yes, you heard that correctly. American tennis veterans Steve Johnson, Sam Querrey, and John Isner claim that Alexandra Eala, a player who just a year ago was barely inside the top 100 and grinding on the challenger circuit, is now the most magnetic force on tour. The buzz around Eala has been described as mind-blowing ridiculous and absolutely insane. On every continent she sets foot on, from the Australian Open in Melbourne to the championships in Doha and Dubai, she's drawing standing room-only crowds. This isn't the polite, customary applause of a tennis audience. It's a level of intensity the sport has rarely ever seen, drawing comparisons to the most passionate soccer fans. Music. To truly grasp the magnitude of this story, we have to look at the stats, the quotes, and the undeniable proof of what's happening inside stadiums right now. We're talking about Eala's pre-tournament press conferences drawing over 171,000 online viewers, completely dwarfing the 29,000 who tuned in for Coco Gauff and Carlos Alcaraz, and far surpassing the 9,000 who watched Aryna Sabalenka. The situation is so intense that the outer courts simply cannot handle the thousands of devoted Filipino fans who travel from all over to see their national hero. Tournament organizers have been forced to scrap their schedules and move a player currently ranked 31st in the world onto centre courts and premier stadiums. When asked if she was the biggest draw, Steve Johnson stated without hesitation that she's making a bigger impact than any rising star in recent memory. John Isner pointed to the enormous untapped potential of the Filipino market, a fan base that is now flooding the tennis scene with an unstoppable and infectious energy. This story is about more than just a talented teenage athlete finding her way. This is a full-blown social phenomenon. It's a story about representation, about the global Filipino community, and how a single person can embody national pride on the world stage. Eala's meteoric rise really kicked off last year with her incredible run to the semi-finals of the Miami Open, where she knocked out several Grand Slam champions along the way. That performance vaulted her to a career-high ranking and led to a recent, highly publicized matchup with Coco Gauff in Dubai. And even though Gauff won that particular match, the American superstar had to stop, take the microphone, and make a point of thanking Eala for bringing a whole new fan base to the sport. The message was crystal clear, the stands were packed, and the energy was electric. Alexandra Eala has arrived, and the world is taking notice. Let's really break down what it means to be a draw in professional tennis. Music. Historically, the sport has relied on epic rivalries and larger-than-life personalities to drive TV ratings and sell tickets. We remember the contrast between John McEnroe's fiery temper and Bjorn Borg's ice-cold precision. We remember the baseline duels between Chris Evert and Martina Navratilova, a rivalry that went beyond the court and captured the essence of the 1970s and 1980s. We watched Andre Agassi's undeniable box office appeal as his flashy clothes and rebellious attitude drew a completely new younger crowd to Wimbledon and Flushing Meadows. Music. And of course, there was the era of Serena Williams, a once-in-a-generation icon whose very presence at a tournament meant sold-out arenas and shattered attendance records. She commanded a level of mainstream media attention that most sports can only dream of. Serena wasn't just a tennis star. She was a global phenomenon. Since her departure from the game, the Women's Tennis Association has been in a transitional period, searching for the next magnetic force to anchor the tour. Incredible champions have certainly stepped up. Ashley Barty brought a beautiful classic game to the court before her early retirement. Iga Świątek has set an unbelievable standard for excellence. Aryna Sabalenka delivers undeniable charisma and explosive power. And Coco Gauff provides the inspirational story of a young prodigy realizing her massive potential on the world's biggest stages. But even with this incredible collection of talent, what Alexandra Eala is doing is fundamentally different in both its origin and its nature. Typically, there's a well-worn path to becoming the biggest draw in tennis. You win a Grand Slam. You break into the top 5 in the world rankings. You land major corporate sponsorships. Then the huge global crowds begin to follow. The popularity comes from sustained top-tier championship success. Alexandra Eala is flipping that model completely on its head. As of now, she's ranked 31st in the world. She has yet to win a Grand Slam singles title. In a lot of ways, she's still polishing her game and finding her way at the top level of the WTA Tour. But her following is already bigger than that of multiple Slam champions. At tournaments all over the Americas, Australia, and the Middle East, she is creating a kind of regional Super Bowl excitement. This whole situation forces you to ask some big questions about what modern sports fandom is all about. I mean, why would any fan buy a ticket, slap on face paint, wave a flag, and just scream their head off? For the global Filipino community, Alexandra Eala is so much more than just an athlete. She's the living, breathing embodiment of their identity, their resilience, and their dreams. The Philippines has always had this deep, passionate love for sports, traditionally dominating in basketball and boxing. For most of its history, tennis was a niche sport, but Eala single-handedly cracked the code, turning a nation of over 100 million people along with its huge global diaspora into die-hard tennis fans. The level of support is just staggering. She carries the pressure and the unwavering roar of an entire country every single time she steps on the court. And this is exactly the issue that Sam Querrey, John Isner, and Steve Johnson brought up. They're waking up to the fact that in 2026, a player's star power isn't just about the number next to their name in the rankings anymore. It's measured by the vibe in the arena, the buzz online, and that undeniable electric energy that fills a stadium when a certain player just picks up their racket. To really understand how big of a deal this is, we need to break down the exact conversation from episode 151 of the Nothing Major podcast, which dropped on February 23, 2026. During their weekly recap, the hosts were covering Jessica Pegula's dominant performance, Sebastian Korda's recent wins, and the unstoppable force that is Carlos Alcaraz. But the most explosive and revealing moment of the entire 44-minute show came during Sam Querrey's regular segment, which he jokingly calls Querrey's Query. Querrey essentially tossed a live grenade into the middle of the conversation. He asked his co-hosts, and I'm quoting here, "My question for you guys is on the women's side. Alexandra Eala. Is she the biggest draw in women's tennis right now in the world? Is she a bigger deal than Sabalenka? Is she bigger than Coco?" Now, the way he framed that question is absolutely critical. Querrey didn't ask if she was the best player. He asked if she was the biggest draw, the top attraction in the business of pro sports. Being the biggest draw is the single most important measure of commercial power. It's what determines TV contracts, sponsorship deals, and the financial success of the tournaments themselves. Steve Johnson's response was instant and left no room for doubt. "Dude, it's insane," Johnson shot back. He immediately made a comparison to the men's tour, bringing up the meteoric rise of Brazilian teenager João Fonseca in Miami the year before, whose matches became legendary because of the sheer noise and passion from the Brazilian fans, which ultimately forced the tournament to move his matches to bigger stadiums just for safety and crowd control. Music. But Johnson didn't stop there. He claimed that Eala's impact is even bigger than the Fonseca effect. Every court in Australia, standing room only. Then in Dubai, standing room only. It's wild. The crowds she is pulling all over the globe right now are just insane. Johnson made it a point to mention just how fast her entire profile has changed. He reminded everyone listening that before the Miami Open in 2025, she was practically a nobody to the average tennis fan around the world. But to hear him tell it, she's an absolute rock star. Music. He broke down how her star power is basically forcing the hands of tournament directors no matter what her ranking is, which happens to be outside the top 10. Tournaments now feel like they have to put her on center court, music, or at the very least on the second biggest stage, because if they don't, they're looking at a total logistical nightmare of packed crowds and clogged walkways. Music. John even chimed in, backing up what Johnson said, pointing out that the crowds for her in Doha last week were wild. Music. Just wild. But it was Isner who brought the critical analysis to the table. He pinpointed the real engine behind this whole unprecedented situation. He explained, it's a huge market. Music. I think a ton of people underestimated just how massive that market is. They finally have a star on the women's side of the sport. There are these giant markets just filled with untapped potential. They just need players to break out and become household names. And Isner's take on this is absolutely spot on. The world of tennis has pretty much always revolved around Europe, North America, and Australia. And it's often had a hard time connecting with and capitalizing on the massive populations in Southeast Asia. I mean, sure, players like Li Na from China and Kei Nishikori from Japan blew the doors wide open in their home countries, but the Philippines never really caught that tennis fever. We're talking about a country with a population of over 115 million people, and on top of that, at least another 10 million living all over the world. This global community is known for having some serious national pride and an incredible desire to get behind their own people who are succeeding on the world stage. So to really get why Alexandra Eala is drawing crowds that make the ones for Grand Slam champions look tiny, you have to dive into the sociology of this fan base. When an athlete from the Philippines starts making waves internationally, it's not just a sporting event anymore. It becomes a full-blown national movement. We've seen this play out before with the legendary boxer Manny Pacquiao. Alexandra Eala is tapping into that exact same cultural electricity. When she steps on the court in Melbourne for the Australian Open, she's not just another tennis player battling it out in the first round. Mamistik. She's representing the thousands of Filipino nurses, engineers, hospitality staff, and students who've built new lives for themselves in Australia. For every single one of them, buying a grounds pass to the Australian Open to watch her is an act of patriotism. It's a chance to wave the red, white, blue and yellow flag with the golden sun and stars. It's a chance to sing their chants, to shout in Tagalog, and to create a feeling of home in a country that isn't their own. And that's what explains the absolutely staggering statistics that we're seeing. Take a look at her digital footprint. A standard pre-tournament press conference with Alexandra Eala drew an astounding 171,000 viewers online. Let that number really sink in. For a player to pull 171,000 live viewers for a press conference is something you just don't see. To put that star power into perspective, at that very same tournament, joint press conferences with global megastars like Carlos Alcaraz and Coco Gauff pulled in about 29,000 viewers. Aryna Sabalenka, the world #1, got around 9,000. These numbers are not just some weird glitch in the algorithm. They are a glaring, undeniable measure of raw, passionate support. Filipino fans aren't just sitting on the sidelines when it comes to tennis. They're an incredibly active, digitally savvy, and intensely loyal fan base that organizes through social media. Music. They handle all the travel logistics. They make sure every stop on the tour feels like a home game for Ella. And when Steve Johnson says she's the biggest draw in the world, he knows that while players like Sabalenka and Gauff have huge global brands, Ella has built an actual army of fans. Every rock star has an origin story. That one moment where they step out of the shadows and right into the blinding spotlight. Music. For Alexandra Eala, that moment came exactly 12 months ago at the 2025 Miami Open. She was just 19 years old, ranked 140th in the world, just grinding it out on the brutal ITF circuit. But then the tournament organizers threw her a lifeline, a main draw wildcard. And what happened next was nothing short of a miracle. Ella didn't just show up to play. She completely tore down the old guard. First up was Elena Ostapenko, the fiery 2017 French Open champ. Ella just soaked up all that power, fired back with pinpoint accuracy, and pulled off a stunning upset. Music. Next, she took on Madison Keys, the powerhouse American. And somehow, the teenager from the Philippines found a way to win again. But the real peak of her Miami Miracle run came against the ultimate test, Świątek. Taking on Świątek on a hard court is one of the toughest challenges in all of professional sports. And yet Ella, Music, backed by those massive roaring Miami crowds that had instantly made her their favorite, played the match of her life, clinching a victory that changed everything for her overnight. Music. Miami was the spark. It shot her into the top 100. It gave her a direct ticket into the Grand Slams. She made it to her first ever WTA final on the grass courts of Eastbourne. She then locked in her first main draw Grand Slam win at the US Open, making her the first Filipina in history to ever do it. By the end of the 2025 season, she was ranked in the top 50, and that just set the stage for the absolute insanity of her 2026 run. If 2025 was the breakthrough, then 2026 is the coronation. When she got to Melbourne, it became clear just how big of a logistical nightmare her popularity was becoming. She was scheduled for her first-round match on Court 6, music, and it created the exact situation tournament directors have nightmares about. See, Court 6 is just a small outer court built for early round matches. It was never designed to handle the massive wave of people that swarmed it. People on the ground described a huge surge of Filipino fans that created a total gridlock. Music. The walkways were completely clogged. Thousands of fans were stuck outside the court, with no way to get in, even though they'd shown up hours ahead of time. It was a real-life example of what Steve Johnson was talking about. The tournament's infrastructure was literally buckling under the weight of her star power. And this whole phenomenon just got bigger when the tour moved to the Middle East. That region has one of the largest populations of overseas Filipino workers anywhere in the world. So when Ella showed up for the Qatar Total Energies Open in Doha, the energy was instantly electric. And John isn't exaggerating when he says the crowds were absolutely insane. Every single seat was taken. The noise was deafening, and every single point she won was met with a roar that sounded more like a World Cup final than a tennis match. But it was in Dubai at the duty-free tennis championships where Ella really cemented her status. Fired up again by those huge, passionate crowds, Eala was on an absolute tear. Music. She blew past Hailey Baptiste, pulled off a huge upset against the talented Italian Jasmine Paolini, and then toppled the veteran Sorana Castella. With every single win, her ranking just kept shooting up, eventually rocketing her to a new career-best world number 31. This incredible hot streak in Dubai set the scene for a quarter-final match that had the entire tennis world buzzing. Alexandra Eala versus Coco Gauff. The quarter-final showdown in Dubai between Alexandra Eala and Coco Gauff was a whole lot more than just a tennis match. It was an incredible collision of two completely different blueprints for tennis stardom. On one side of the court, you had Coco Gauff. Gauff is the very definition of a modern American superstar, complete with a Grand Slam title and off-the-charts athleticism, a backhand that is absolutely lethal, and the kind of polished, media-ready personality of someone who has been groomed for the spotlight their whole life. On the other side was Alexandra Eala, the ultimate Cinderella story who had become a global sensation. Music. She was coming into the match as the clear underdog, outmatched in both ranking and experience. But she had a powerful advantage that you can't quantify: the crowd. Even though the match was happening in the United Arab Emirates, that stadium felt like it belonged to Eala. For Gauff, who's sitting at world number 4, she's used to being the fan favourite, but that wasn't the case on this particular night. In the eyes of thousands of incredibly passionate Filipino fans, she was playing the role of the villain. The match itself was an absolute masterclass put on by the American Gauff. It was as if she sensed how dangerous it would be to let that crowd get fully behind their player, because she walked out on that court with a breathtaking level of focus and intensity. She broke Eala's serve in the very first game, and just relentlessly followed her tactical playbook, zeroing in on Eala's forehand side. Gauff actually won the first 10 games of the match in a row. Eala never quit fighting, but the lead Gauff had built was simply too big to overcome. The final score was 6-6-2 in favor of the American. But the most important moment of the entire evening didn't happen during the match at all. It happened during the on-court interview right after it was over. This is where the true class and smarts of Coco Gauff were on full display. Gauff stood there in the middle of the stadium holding the microphone and looked out at a sea of people who had been actively cheering against her. But instead of getting frustrated, she handled the situation with pure class. "Thank you guys for coming out here," Gauff said to start. "I know you are mostly supporting Alex, but I have to say it's great to be on a crowded court. Also, I'd like to thank Alex for bringing a new demographic to the sport. I really appreciate it. I think it's great." This was a massive statement. Music. Coco Gauff, one of the most recognizable athletes on the entire planet, was publicly acknowledging that Alexandra Eala is literally expanding the audience for professional tennis. When a player of Gauff's status confirms the crowd dynamic in such a public way, it makes the narrative official. This is no longer some debate you'd hear on a podcast. It is a reality that you simply cannot ignore. To truly understand the argument that Eala brings in more fans than Aryna, Sabalenka and Coco, you have to take a hard look at what Sabalenka and Gauff stand for. Aryna Sabalenka is the apex predator of the WTA Tour. Her serve is like a weapon of mass destruction, and she hits her ground strokes with a power that almost no one else on the tour can handle. Sabalenka is a huge draw because people flock to see that kind of raw, overwhelming power. Music. But the thing is, her fan base is mostly made up of the traditional old-school tennis crowd. She definitely earns respect and admiration, but she doesn't spark that deep-down flag-waving patriotism in people. Coco Gauff is the golden girl of American tennis. She pulls in massive crowds, especially when she plays in the United States, and she's bringing in a younger crowd that follows her every move on social media. She's a fantastic ambassador for tennis, no doubt. But what Ella's doing is on a whole different level. Ella isn't just grabbing the attention of tennis fans. Music. She's turning people who never watched tennis before into obsessed superfans, scrambling to buy tickets, all because of her nationality and her winning streak. Music. For example, if you put Aryna Sabalenka on a court in Dubai to play against a mid-tier opponent, the stadium will be pretty full, a comfortable crowd.